Italy, the land of pasta, sunshine, and Roman ruins. A country that gave the world Da Vinci, Ferrari, and pizza. To many Americans, it's a paradise. Good food, beautiful people, dramatic coastline. But behind the charm lies a split, not political, but economic. Northern Italy is rich, developed, and industrial. Southern Italy is poorer, less populated, and still struggling to catch up. Same country. Two realities. How did this happen? Let's start with geography. Northern Italy is part of the European core. The Po Valley, a flat, fertile plain, stretches from Turin to Venice. It's close to France, Germany, and Austria. It has rivers, roads, railways, and access to markets. It's no accident that major cities like Milan, Turin, and Bologna became industrial giants. Milan is Italy's financial and fashion capital. Turin is home to Fiat and the automotive industry. Bologna has a world-class university and strong manufacturing. Southern Italy, or the Mezzogiorno, is different. It's mountainous, isolated, with narrow coastal plains and limited infrastructure. Roads are fewer, trains are slower. The land is more difficult to farm, and natural disasters like earthquakes and volcanic eruptions are more common. Geography isn't destiny, but it set the stage. After World War II, Italy was in ruins. But when the rebuilding began, it wasn't equal. The North bounced back quickly. It received most of the Marshall Plan funding. Factories were rebuilt. Steel and car industries surged. Milan became a European hub. Turin became the Detroit of Italy. Meanwhile, the South was left behind. Yes, government funds were promised, but they arrived late and often disappeared into corruption, bureaucracy, or mafia hands. Billions were spent on infrastructure projects that were never completed, highways that led nowhere, empty industrial zones. While the North became a symbol of European recovery, the South became a source of labor. Between 1950 and 1970, over 4 million people from southern regions migrated, many to the north, others to countries like Germany, Switzerland, and the U.S. They left in search of work and opportunity. Entire villages in the south were emptied. What remained was a shrinking, aging population and an economy built on remittances. And it's not just history. The divide continues. Let's look at the numbers. And they're brutal. In 2024, GDP per capita in South Tyrol was over 54,000 euros. In Lombardy, where Milan is, it's around 44,000 euros. Compare that to Sicily, just 20,000 euros. And Calabria, barely 19,400 euros. In other words, the South earns less than half of the North. But it gets worse. Youth unemployment in Calabria and Sicily hovers around 40%. That means nearly half of people under 25 can't find work, even with a degree. In many areas, the public sector is the only major employer. Private industry is weak. Startups are rare, and informal, unregistered work is common, meaning less tax revenue, no job security, and limited benefits. It's not just economics. It's about dignity. Graduates with engineering degrees working in retail or leaving the country entirely. One report from Svi Mez, an Italian research institute, estimates the South loses 100,000 people per year, many of them young, educated, and skilled. It's not just brain drain, it's bleeding potential. So, what happens when an entire generation sees no future? They pack up and go. Between 2002 and 2022, over 2.5 million Italians emigrated, most of them under 35. The overwhelming majority came from the South. They're not just construction workers or laborers. They're engineers, nurses, teachers, designers, trained in Italy, employed elsewhere. In places like Naples or Reggio Calabria, young people see the same pattern. If you want to build a future, you leave. They head to Milan, Berlin, London, or New York, not because they want to, but because they feel they have no choice. Southern towns are filled with grandparents and empty houses. Birth rates have collapsed. Over 2,000 towns in Italy are at risk of disappearing completely by 2050, most of them in the south. It's not just a demographic crisis. It's a collapse of faith in the future. The South trains its best people and then exports them for free. And then there's the elephant in the room: organized crime. The Camorra in Naples, the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria, the Cosa Nostra in Sicily. These aren't just gangsters. They're economic parasites. They control public contracts. They rig bidding systems. They demand kickbacks from businesses. They intimidate mayors and officials. They steal EU development funds. For decades, the Mafia has operated as a shadow state, especially in regions where the real government is weak or absent. In some towns, if you want to open a store or a construction site, you need Mafia approval. If you don't pay up, your business might mysteriously burn down. This isn't just criminal, it's economic sabotage. Foreign investors stay away. Young entrepreneurs give up. Innovation dies before it's born. The Mafia is a silent tax on growth, trust, and the rule of law, and its cost is measured in billions. Southern Italy isn't just losing people, it's also receiving them. It sits on the front lines of Europe's migration crisis. Thousands of migrants from Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia arrive every year. They come by boat, often rescued from dangerous journeys across the Mediterranean, and they land in places like Lampedusa, Sicily, and Calabria, regions already facing unemployment, budget cuts, and population decline. These are some of the poorest areas in Europe, and now they're being asked to manage a global humanitarian crisis. Italy's national government has struggled to create a consistent migration policy. Tensions flare between cities, regions, and political parties. While Rome debates quotas, mayors in the South deal with real people every day. Some migrants settle and contribute, others move north, but many end up in legal limbo, unable to work, stuck in overcrowded housing, vulnerable to exploitation. This isn't just about borders. It's about whether the South has the capacity or the support to absorb people in need. The North-South divide in Italy isn't just about money. It's also about perception, identity. Northern Italians often view themselves as modern, efficient, closer to Germany and Switzerland than to Naples. They're proud of their high-tech industries, design firms, and export economy. Southern Italians? They're too often portrayed as backwards, dependent on subsidies, mired in corruption, slow to modernize. These are unfair stereotypes, but powerful ones. They influence media coverage, business decisions, and government policy. When a company decides where to open its next office, Milan wins. Not because it's always cheaper, but because it's seen as safer. When a Southern politician asks for development funds, critics accuse them of waste and corruption, even before any project begins. This creates a vicious cycle: bad image, less investment, underdevelopment, worse image, and it's reinforced by culture. TV shows, jokes, even national debates feed the myth of the lazy South. But let's be clear, people in Palermo or Bari work just as hard as those in Turin or Bologna. What they don't have is trust, from the state, investors, or the media. Here's the paradox. Southern Italy might be poor, but it's rich in potential. Its volcanic soil produces some of Europe's best olive oil, citrus, and wine. Its 7,500 kilometers of coastline make it a natural tourism powerhouse. It has more UNESCO World Heritage Sites than most countries. It's also sunny, extremely sunny, enough to become a leader in solar energy production. Labor costs are lower, housing is cheaper. Young people would stay if they had reason to believe in the system. But the basics are missing. High-speed rail stops in Naples. Many towns lack decent internet. Local governments are overburdened and underfunded. Permits can take months or bribes. Want to start a business? Good luck with the red tape. Want to innovate? There's no venture capital, no mentors, no incentives. It's not the people that are lacking. It's the structure around them. The South doesn't need charity. It needs tools. Is there hope? Yes. But it's not easy. And definitely not fast. It takes more than a new EU grant or a high-speed train. It takes rebuilding trust, opportunity, and confidence from the ground up. Some towns are showing the way. Matera, once called Italy's national shame, was famous for cave dwellings, poverty, and disease. Today, it's a model of urban revival, a UNESCO site, a film location, a cultural hub. In 2019, it was named a European Capital of Culture. What changed? Investments in tourism, preservation, and education, paired with smart leadership and community involvement. But one Matera is not enough. Italy needs dozens. It needs to empower local governments, fund schools, build infrastructure, and cut red tape. It needs to reward innovation, not punish it with paperwork, and most of all, it needs to inspire people to come back, or stay. This isn't charity, it's strategy. Southern Italy could be Europe's next growth engine, if given a fair chance. Southern Italy isn't broken. It's just been ignored. It's not just Italy's problem. It's Europe's missed opportunity. A region with the natural beauty of Greece, the history of Rome, the energy of southern Spain, but none of the investment. So what if we flipped the narrative? What if we treated the South as strategic, not as a burden? What if Europe invested in solar hubs in Calabria? What if global companies opened offices in Naples instead of Berlin? The divide between North and South is real, but it's not irreversible. Bridges can be built, talent can return, growth can spread. But first, Italy and Europe must admit the divide exists. Only then can they start to close it. Enjoyed the video? Leave a comment below, hit the like button, and subscribe for more deep dive content just like this.